Hey everybody, Ozark Gilman here. So, yeah, that kind of headline is very, very common these days. The media, the mainstream media, they promote it. This is not uncommon. It's been around a long time. It's been the leftist standpoint for a long time. I mean, look back in the 60s, people who were, actual violent terrorists back then were not only just perfectly freed, but then were given tenured professorships at universities. And they've been teaching, our generations of young people for many, many decades now, and brainwashing them in these echo chambers and threatening to ruin their lives and having power to ruin their lives if they don't hate themselves and their own people in exchange for a socially acceptable status. Or at the very least, learn to keep your mouth shut and not say anything. Maybe speak a little bit here and there about the issues that affect your people, but if you do speak too much about the issues that affect your people and want anything at all that favors your people or helps your people, then you will be a white supremacist. Because literally anything white, anything, any movement, church, religion, whatever it is white supremacy. Don't take my word for it. Google white supremacy in any religion, movement, anything. So now, to the point here, judging our ancestors. Judging our ancestors through a modern lens and then looking at the past based on the type of history that we were taught. But now let's put ourselves in their shoes. This is an actual historically accurate portrayal here. Let's imagine, if you will, you are your ancestor in the rural South. I don't know, let's say rural North Alabama in the mountains. Literally no one in your county owns a single slave. You're a small farmer, rough land, but it was cheap. Your ancestors were brought here as indentured servants, farm tobacco, everything. Barely, they were one of the very few who survived. And if you don't make enough of a crop and you can't get that crop all the way to either the Gulf or the coast, the Atlantic coast, to sell, then you and your family will starve, they will die. There's no unemployment, there's nothing backing up, there's no one taking care of you. But the federal government has for a long time now, almost caused another civil war over taxes and tariffs on the southern coasts and southern ports on southern crops. Because the South is not industrialized or agricultural, and they're very wealthy because of it. You do not like the wealthy plantation owners. No one even owns a slave. You never had anything to do with slavery. But you don't like them because you don't like to compete against them. Your concern is feeding and taking care of your family. Because again, remember, no unemployment. It is a literal actual saying, bridge to nowhere, because corrupt businessmen in the North take your money from those taxes and tariffs. The North outnumbers the South like 3 to 1, 2 to 1 to 3 to 1 in population. So you have no say in the federal government. You can't afford any lobbying. So it is numerically, the federal government is stacked against you and used against you. They take your money and they literally build bridges to nowhere in the North by corrupt northern oligarchs paying off the government, which they own. Now, would you not go to war when that same federal government, when finally your state secedes, finally you may be free of these taxes and tariffs? Would you not go to war if that same federal government, which you did constitutionally and legally, would you not go to war against that federal government when they invade your state? Unconstitutionally, illegally. And 600,000 men died. You're saying that wasn't justified? You're saying that the cultural banner that they waved and continue to wave after is not a cause? That now we can't have the ethnic and cultural interest? Why? Oh, because we're white. White supremacy. Now, let's take another angle, maybe a few decades later. You're another one of your ancestors out on the Western Plains. You're settling. Your government set up and negotiated treaties with tribes ahead of time. Extremely sparse area. You build your own homestead. You build your own village. You build your own post out. You build your own everything. You have to police yourself. You take care of yourself. Again, no unemployment. If you don't get a crop in, if you don't have working horses, you starve to death. Someone steals a horse. Are you not going to hang them? Because that's a slow starvation and death sentence of whoever was left in the wilderness of whose horse they stole. But are we going to judge them today? Oh, that's white supremacy, right? Now, you see a bunch of, young Amerindian men. We call them Amerindian. They called them Native Americans. We are the people who founded the nation America. We are the native people of it. So I say Amerindian. You see a tribe of Amerindian men riding at you with rifles that they got from white men, with horses that they got from white men, because they didn't have any of those things before we came along, before they got them from the Spaniards. And they're riding at you, and you know that they're going to kill you, the women, the children, and they're going to cut off your scalps to keep as trophies. Are you not going to pick up a rifle and fight? Would you support gun laws that would disarm you and your family? Oh, that's so different from today, right? Surely, you don't have to worry about serious crime from other groups of people in major cities or anything like that. The cities that we built and were violently run out of and then blamed for it. Kind of like your ancestors were. So stop. Stop apologizing for your ancestors. Stop accepting the false narrative of history. Because everybody's got blood on their hands. Everybody for everything, it was a matter of survival. The vast majority of our ancestors, the poorer people who had to work to survive, were the ones who had the most children because they needed them to survive. The women who were barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, I'm not saying that bad things didn't happen, of course, to women back then. They weren't ill-treated. Men were ill-treated as well, but you will only hear one half of the story to call it oppression, right? Said there was no right. There was one vote per household. That vote was extremely valuable, and the male of the household voted. Oh, but hey, we're going to call it oppression, right? Because we're going to reframe everything in history, as the radical second-wave feminists said in the 60s, like Gloria Steinem, by the way, who was funded by the CIA, right? She admitted that. To get the other half of the population and the workforce, encourage them to stop having kids, and then, hey, when they stop having kids, they're demoralized, they're told their people and their ancestors were evil in order to get them to shut up as they're ethnically replacing their own nation, and as Biden said himself, it's being done deliberately. Stop being ashamed of your ancestors. Stop apologizing for them. Stop acting like you don't have a right to speak up ethnically and culturally for your people. Because as you don't, the GOP won't do it. They won't. Mark my words, they will not, they do not. Even when they say a word like anti-white, go ahead and look up white people, whiteness parasite. Right there, top of the search results on our own National Institute of Health. The organization that Fauci worked for. Totally trustworthy, right? Well, it calls us parasites. And parasite is something that our own NIH says must be wiped out, which is literally what has happened. We're being ethnically cleansed, just like we were violently run out of our own big cities and economic centers. We still haven't recovered from that. And then taught a false version of history about our own ancestors. So, go ahead, try to be like your ancestors. Actually speak up in favor for your people. Care about your own people, because if you don't, no one will. You owe it to your ancestors, you owe it to your descendants. Your people are literally the blood extension of your own family. You are related from first to fourth cousin, likely to tens of thousands of people in the regions your ancestors lived in. Their bones are literally buried in the soil of the nation that they built. Again, stop apologizing for them and acting like you don't have any collective interest as a people, like everybody else on the planet does and should do. Individualism doesn't mean that we don't have a collective interest as a people. You better start acting like it and speak up for your ancestors, and don't forget about your descendants. That's who this is all about. A wise man looks at the state of his ethnic and cultural group around him and realizes that that is going to be the future for his own children and grandchildren and descendants. And he sets up a future for his ethnic and cultural group around him in their place, in their area, for the sake of his own descendants. Because again, your people are the literal blood extension of your own family. Speak up on behalf of them like our ancestors did. Try to live up to what they were. Because the mainstream media headlines like this are becoming the daily violent reality. And we can all see it now that the algorithms have been somewhat broken. And we have smartphones and we can record and share these things that have been happening for decades and only getting worse. As is the hate against us as we are ethnically cleansed and told we can't speak up for our interests, and when we do, it's hate speech. So speak up for your people. You're going to be called racist and evil and white supremacist either way, because literally anything white is white supremacy. Speak up for your people like your ancestors did. The GOP, nobody will do it for us. If you feel this is an important message, please, by all means, share it. Let people know about it. This is Ozark Gilman. You'll have a good one.